You hear someone ahead of you. It's a person, right? If that's the case, then why do you feel off? Why is that instinct of fight or flight suffocating you right now? It's a person. It has to be. But something's wrong. It's not human. It's not a person. Hello everyone. Today we will be talking about the horrors of the Uncanny Valley, which if you don't know, it is the hypothesized relation of a human likeness of an object and the viewer's emotional response to that object, usually seen with robots, dolls, or mannequins. As an example, watch this. Now if that scared you like it did me, that is the Uncanny Valley at work. Before we dive deeper, if you're new here, hello, and if you're returning, it's good to see you again. And if you're eating right now, I hope it's good. Alright, let's get into it. The Uncanny Valley theory comes from Masahiro Mori, a Japanese robotist. In 1978, the book Robots, Fact, Fiction, and Prediction, written by Jaza Reckart, came out that held the theory from Masahiro Mori. Mori hypothesized in an essay that as a human's likeness increases in an object's design, so does a person's affinity for that object, but only to a certain point. When the object's likeness nears total accuracy, the affinity for the object drops, becoming eerie and uncanny. However, when true human likeness indicating a living person is reached, people's likeness towards that then shoots back up. Mori supplied a graph to try to help understand this theory, and from my understanding, there is a sweet spot where an entity that appears human-like can be shit your pants terrifying. And within that sweet spot, there's many ways to make the feeling of eeriness intensify. Mori proposes that moving objects become more eerie, giving an example of a zombie being more scary than a corpse. The original phrase that Masahiro Mori came up with was, and apologies for butchering this, Bukimi no Tani, which roughly translates to Uncanny Valley. But Mori's essay, which the Uncanny Valley came from, was more focused on robotic designs. But the theory has become more open to any object over time. Speaking of over time, Masahiro Mori's theory didn't really gain traction until 2005, when it was translated to English. Once translated, it became a topic of interest in many different fields, including film, robotics, and even prosthetics. Mori's theory was also not based on scientific fact, nor did he want it to be. And studies that have been conducted over time have proven it true and false. Some researchers say Mori's graph should be more like a cliff drop-off, while other researchers disregard the graph completely, saying it solely depends on a person's life experience if they'll be bothered by an object with human likeness. Some robotic experiments show that people interacted less with robots that looked more like humans. This is all to say that the existence of the Uncanny Valley is generally inconclusive, hence why it's a theory. So this video is based off the horror of the Uncanny Valley, and a lot of the times the horror isn't on purpose. We see that a lot within animation. The first film to allegedly be impacted by the Uncanny Valley theory is an animated short film called Tin Toy by John Lasseter, released in 1988. This film highly inspired Disney's Toy Story. Now you may be asking, why is this in a horror video about the Uncanny Valley? Well, meet Billy.
What the hell is even that?
The film Tin Toy received a standing ovation. However, Billy provoked negative audience reactions, which yeah, look at him. Now as horrifying as Billy is, this didn't affect the success of the film. The animation at the time was groundbreaking, and usually with animation that's groundbreaking, it is common for the Uncanny Valley to visit. In 2001, the first photorealistic computer-animated film was released. This was Final Fantasy: The Spirits Within. This would be the most expensive video game-based film in history, and it would hold on to that plaque for 9 years. That isn't a good thing, because this film would be a notorious box office bomb, with viewers split on how they felt about the animation. The animation was definitely a foot forward for its time, with many critics saying the animation raises the bar for other animated films. Like Robert Ebert, an American film critic, shared the feeling many had, saying that the film was simply glorious to look at. However, other critics said that the faces weren't quite real enough, or that the eyes didn't give off human emotions. Again, this isn't to say it's not a step forward in animation. Most of the actual critiques from the movie came from the story, which many say fell short or was dull. It is unclear if the Uncanny Valley had an actual effect on Final Fantasy: The Spirits Within. However, being the biggest box office bomb for 9 years isn't a good sign. Jumping to a very popular film that spread the Uncanny Valley theory to many of us before we even knew what that was. The Polar Express. Now this film is a top 3 Christmas film of all time, and it's not 2 or 3.
However,
This? I knew something was off even as a wee little child. Many other people that watched The Polar Express said that the animation felt eerie. Only recently have I come across people who say The Polar Express sucks because of the animation, usually saying it looks creepy. Now their opinions are obviously wrong, but some of the critiques like the dead eyes or the off-face expressions are totally valid. John Anderson, a Newsday reviewer, said that The Polar Express is a zombie train. Now I wouldn't go that far, although a train conductor did kidnap a whole train full of children, so I wouldn't write it off. But the Uncanny Valley theory might be the reason you never liked The Polar Express. The final example of the Uncanny Valley theory is Cats. Now this movie has James Gordon in it, so I'm not going to talk about it. And there are many more examples of the Uncanny Valley in film, like The Christmas Carol, the 2009 Jim Carrey one, and Mars Needs Moms, another infamous box office bomb. But it's mainly just complaints about how the face animation doesn't quite fit with an actual human. In my opinion, all these critiques about the Uncanny Valley, while valid, I love. It adds a certain flair to these films. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but I enjoy it regardless. Now let's talk about some icons that were affected by the Uncanny Valley theory. Bob the Builder, you remember him. Well, this is him now. Yeah, don't do drugs. Or don't cheap out on CGI animation over amazing stop motion animation. But, who am I to say? But that's not here or there. Or over there. That was stupid. Anyway, the redesign for Bob the Builder was almost universally panned. Many people saying it ruined their childhoods. The Uncanny Valley aspect of the new design is seen with the small beady eyes compared to his head, as well as a disproportionate nose and mouth. Now I understand OG Bob wasn't peak sexiness like Danny DeVito, but when you had a steak dinner and someone replaced it with like a frozen Salisbury steak, it pisses you off. From watching clips, the animation isn't bad, but if you're gonna do a remake, why not remake it with stop motion? Well, obviously it's because CGI animation is cheaper and frankly easier to do, but still. Then again, I'm a grown man complaining about this, so it's not really my demographic. Another icon affected by the Uncanny Valley theory is Sonic. This example is notorious because the team behind the Sonic the Hedgehog movie took months to redesign the character after public backlash, thus becoming a famous example of the Uncanny Valley that wasn't done on purpose. With people pointing out the eerie unconjoined eyes and the all too human-like teeth, almost everyone hated this design. Tyson Heese, who had worked on previous Sonic media, plus the other designers were behind the redesign. It took them 5 months and roughly $5 million, but luckily the turnaround when the second trailer came out was huge. If people didn't love the design now, they at least appreciated the effort they put in. And judging by the budget compared to the box office, I'd say their efforts were rewarded. Now I've listed films and icons that have come after 1978, the year the Uncanny Valley theory was hypothesized. However, this theory was in motion long before Masahiro Mori coined the term in his essay. An example of the Uncanny Valley theory before it was officially hypothesized is John Carpenter's Halloween, released in 1978. This is the first Halloween movie, just for clarification. Now, while the essay that had the Uncanny Valley theory in it was released in the same year, the theory wasn't translated to English until 2005. So while John Carpenter and the team behind Halloween were focused on making a scary slasher, they didn't know they would be using techniques from the Uncanny Valley theory. As many of you know, Michael Myers' mask is just William Shatner's mask painted white, with some touch-ups. However, that was just enough to make some people terrified of the embodiment of evil that has the high speed of 4 miles per hour.
I am speed.
Production designer Tommy Lee Wallace bought a William Shatner mask for about $2 and spray painted it white before tinkering with it, to create what we know as Michael Myers. And comparing it to Maury's graph, it's in that sweet spot of human likeness where it's terrifying. While Tommy Lee Wallace created a horror icon,
Hello there.
he also unknowingly created a famous example of the Uncanny Valley. For this next example of the Uncanny Valley theory, before it was official, we're going way back to 1902, with the film
Voyage dans la Lune.
translated English, A Trip to the Moon. Directed by George Méliès. We actually watched the full 16 minutes of this film on YouTube. The Uncanny Valley theory is shown very briefly. However, I saw this clip when I was younger, and it freaked me out so bad that I remember it to this day. The play follows astronomers' journey to the moon and back, dealing with the moon's creatures along the way. A Trip to the Moon has been highly praised with its filming techniques, influencing many other French films that would follow. It is undeniable that it is horrifying, with the face so proportionally large, and not to mention the leaking thick cake batter once the astronauts land, just to mess with the moon's face some more. It might be because it's old black and white footage and I think that's just creepy in general, or maybe I'm just a bitch. But I really think it's cool that the Uncanny Valley theory has examples from the early makings of film, back when I'm sure they didn't prioritize an object's likeness to a human for an intentional reaction. Looking into visual effects that have been influenced by the Uncanny Valley theory, when it comes to horror, I believe most of us horror fans love practical effects. It looks better, more realistic, and scarier. I believe it's because of the Uncanny Valley. With practical effects, talking like gore stunts, feels more brutal and uncomfortable, rather than CGI where you get taken out of the film because it doesn't look real. The reason for that is because of how similar the practical effects look to humans. Usually practical effects involve molding, where an object will be molded over to create an identical mold to use for fun, thus creating something that almost looks human, that then can be used for horrifying purposes. If not molding, films usually have a whole team of artists that solely focus on making a prop look realistic. While the Uncanny Valley may just be a theory, it is undeniable that something resembling a human but not quite a human is horrifying. With so much horror-oriented media with the Uncanny Valley characteristics, I thought it'd be fun to look into what gives us that uneasy feeling, and I hope you enjoyed it as well. If you did, please leave a like, and if you're cool, subscribe. Alright, bye.